I'd like to acknowledge some of our special guests today. We have Professor Peter Klinken, Chief Scientist, Dr. Claire Patterson, Director, Science and Innovation, Department of Jobs, Tourism, Science and Innovation, Sarah Conway, Director of Industry Engagement, also from JETSI, Professor Gary Allison, Associate Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Research Excellent, Curtin University, and Professor Caroline Finch, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Research, Edith Cowan University. So a special thanks also goes to Mark Stickles, Director at Pawsey Supercomputing Centre, and his team for collaborating on this event and bringing together Data Science Week. We will also be joined by the Honourable Stephen Dawson, Minister for Innovation and ICT, at approximately 1:15. He'll provide an address during the networking component of today's proceedings. So I would like to welcome traditional owner and Whadjuk Noongar representative Mr Barry Maguire to conduct a welcome to country on behalf of the Whadjuk people on whose land we are meeting on. Welcome, Gary.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. And can I also acknowledge and thank Pawsey and the WA Science community here for having a welcome to country as a part of your gathering. And you're probably thinking, welcomes to countries, Aboriginal culture, no sort of understanding of science and connection. But it is. Science has been a part of our culture since the start of time. It was always there in the midst of our spirituality, the things that we made. And it may not have looked like that when the buildings weren't here, when the first settlers came, but inside of the understanding of the botanical system, understanding of the geographical formations through our songs and our stories and connections, the understanding of meteorology, the science inside of the stars. How does the Southern Cross belong to the Walja? Walja is a whistling eagle. It's the footprint of it. How did we see that came down in the ancient times and went back? Connections to the stars, connections to the aquifer underneath through song and dance. As we walk across the land and seeing the water that is running, it's through the electricity that we have within our spirituality as Aboriginal people. Any human being can do that. Looking at and practicing the old traditions from every nation in this world, somebody walked away from the spiritual connection and looked towards the physical connection. You see, there is a line of energy that is seen within a song. Understood, how do we stand as human beings and say to you, that's a man's place, no woman should go there. That's a man's place, and so shall we sing as men. That's a woman's place there, and no man should go there. The balance and understanding of science within nature that has always been here from us as human beings and sharing with all nations of Australians, this platform should be as one. You see, down here at a place called Gumup, which is Elizabeth Key called today, two men stood there and shook hands. Captain Sterling and an old man named Yalagonga, my father's ancestor. They shook hands and they created a smile. But they didn't create the ongoing thought and processes and understandings of obligations of life and governance. And how did we stand as human beings? Find the synergies of life, finding who are we as people, not seeing the differences as what we look like or the ancient kind of ways, because we have always been here in the balance of life. We never had buildings for a purpose. We never had hospitals, we never had prisons, because nature kept us balanced, and our customary law and obligations of life, we shared that with each other. If somebody came from Mandurah, they had to sit off in the way out in Rockingham there and make a little fire. Let us know that they wanted to come here. We watched them for 3 days. If they weren't bringing the right energy, we would turn them away and they'd had to go home. But when we brought them in, we spent 2 weeks in order to understand who are we as human beings, how do we fit within the environment, sharing the understanding of our spiritual connections through our totemistic existence, our laws and our customs, and synergies of human existence in this life. Science has always been here. Science will always be here, no matter who runs that road faster than the other. But let us not try and run fast, let us try and run together in different ancient knowledges or the different new knowledge of the way that we stand as human beings today. One day I was standing in my lounge room and my son said, "Son, Dad, you see that line out there that's running from pole to pole?" And he went and turned the light switch on and off. He was only 4. "How does that happen?" he said. I said, "Well, you got to learn. You got to walk with people with an understanding of how does that sit for us as human beings and keeps us safe. But keep progressing, son. Keep learning from the people that have tomorrow's knowledge." You see, yesterday's knowledge and today's knowledge can create something better. And we as Australians, especially West Australians, are coming forward to stand in a platform that we can create many points of knowledge that can make us stronger as a community. And I thank you for allowing me to share a small understanding. It's something that is like holding a handful of sand on a beach and saying, well, that's Australia. But what you're standing on is the knowledge of Aboriginal Australia. Let's bring it all forward. Let's bring it all together and see how many hands can hold that sand to make it better. I am honoured to stand here. I am honoured to be amongst you. And I thank you for allowing me to speak my mind. But for us as West Australians, Welcomes to Countries is about how do we find a balance between us as human beings. So it is beautiful that you and I can sit on this land of the Wajok lands here today. And may the energy that lived in this land and always lives in this land rise up and hold us as many. And may the energies and spirituality of my grandmothers who have gone and my grandfathers that have gone come here and hold you and walk with your grandmothers and grandfathers who have gone too. Because in the spirit world, when they smile, so shall we today. You see, we're only here for a small time. And whilst our eyes are open, that's the only time we get in order to make a change. No matter who is sitting next to you. Whilst your eyes are open, let's tell each other stories. Let's create the science that should sit between us as nations of this world to better Western Australia. Thank you for allowing me to speak like I'm always speaking. But wanda ba no naka word kujara ba kakawona nyara ba yakana jara no naka bulan jara ngup bityo wajok bujaji. Welcome to you all. I am so happy and honoured to be able to stand with many nations here today as one. Our country that we all share, the energy that we share, may that live inside of your minds into the future. This old song is the energy of Kings Park. This old song was always sung in this vicinity. And may this song make us stronger as West Australians, make us stronger as people of Perth, because it's been singing since this land was vibrations at the start. And it'll go until we can't sing no more. Wanare gamalana, wanare gamalana, boyongora waningo, boyongora waningo, wanare gamalana, boyongora waningo, wanare gamalana, wanare gamalana, boyongora waningo, boyongora waningo, wanare gamalana. Boyongora you imagine way back then 100 men singing that here for the protection of their women and children. If you imagine today, if that handshake happened, all of you men would have been singing it with me here today. For our women, for our kids, for science, for us to stand as one. Welcome, West Aussies. Thank you for listening, and may your day be blessed with everything that science brings. And I shouldn't say welcome, but be safe on our country that we share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maguire. Welcome everyone to Data Science Week. So Data Science Week brings together a community of data scientists, technologists, visualisers and educators to raise awareness of data science. The week focuses on increasing the uptake of data science training, projects, activities and discussing trending topics and ideas. So today's official launch includes a special panel discussion on the state of data science in WA and its impacts on research, industry, education and the future. So the need for digital and data literacy has never been greater. A staggering 87% of jobs in Australia currently require digital literacy skills. This number is only going to increase. It's going to be identified that industry within Australia needs over 160,000 new specialist workers by 2030 in the areas of artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision, and other data-related technologies. The Data Science in WA report showed that over 95% of WA organisations rank data science as vital for its future growth, with most determining that their data science teams will likely double over the next 5 years. We are witnessing major investments and adaptations to health, agriculture, mining, education and financial sectors across Australia. WA has a natural advantage in many of these areas. There is immense potential for WA to lead the way in the adoption of AI for business innovation and growth. So this is where WADSI plays a vital role. WADSI is a partnership between the WA State Government and Curtin University, and our aim is to ensure WA remains at the forefront of this digital revolution. So we do this by acting as a conduit between government, industry and academia, which enables cross-sector collaboration and access to data science knowledge and expertise. This supports the growth of data literacy and data science capabilities across Western Australia. With this said, WADSI are proud to partner with Pawsey Supercomputing Centre to bring you today's launch event. I'd now like to invite our panellists to the stage for today's panel discussion. Okay, I'd like to ask you all some questions, have a bit of a conversation, but can we just take a few minutes to begin with? Can everyone introduce themselves, what they do, and their background as it relates to science and data science?
All right, Peter Clinken, Chief Scientist at WA, the state's official Uber geek.
Rachel Oliver, Head of Computer Science at UWA, so I'm responsible for educating data scientists and also for collaborative research in data science.
Hi, I'm Anne Buckhouse. I'm the Education and Training Manager at the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre. I am a geek, aspiring geek. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melanie Johnson-Hollett. I'm actually a professor of radio astronomy by training, and I used to work on the Square Kilometre Array and the Murchison-Whitefield Array radio telescope. But now I run the Curtin Institute for Computation, which is a data science institute at Curtin University. We have 35 data scientists, research software engineers and project coordinators, and we work with industry, government and academia on a range of data science projects from fish counting to analysing bush fire smoke from satellites. As part of that, we have a project called ASDAF, the Australian Space Data Analysis Facility, which looks at using satellite data, Earth observation data, and using data science to help SMEs and researchers improve their economic benefits.
Thank you very much, guys. So, Peter, if I can start with you. I I know that you have big visions for WA in the future. Let's look to 2040 and 2050. What is the WA of the future and how it relates to science and technology?
Just the little ones first.
Yep, we'll just start off with the small ones.
Okay. 2040. Well, I'd like to think that, let's talk about society. I'd like to think that we've got a society that's clever, that's creative, that's compassionate, that's cohesive, that's courageous and confident. How do we get there? I think what we have are a number of key elements where we've got comparative advantages here in Western Australia, and we need to turn them into competitive advantages so that we make the most of the incredible assets that we've got in this state, so that our kids, our grandkids and their kids will benefit from this fabulous place. And I think, we build on 60,000, 65,000 years of knowledge. As we've just heard Barry say, there is a deep, deep understanding and a connection with this land that we have. And where we go into the future is dependent on how we maintain that connection and how we, as a people, create this wonderful new potential society. I think it's a worrying time in many ways. We're going through the third and the fourth industrial revolutions. The world has never changed more rapidly. We're finding we've had a global pandemic, we've had global financial crises, we're now seeing massive changes in geopolitics. The world is feeling very, very uneasy. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that through this unease, we chart a way forward that is good for our societies. And we can do that within Western Australia. We can start here and say, this is the vision that we want for our state, our people, our community, and that can have a ripple effect beyond WA. So I just see that we're in this incredible moment now, where if we seize the moment, we really grasp it, and we take off, we'll have a massive impact, locally, nationally, and then globally.
Thank you. So on that note, how do we make WA? WA is obviously a very isolated place, but I think we've learnt over the last few years that we can all work together virtually in quite an effective manner. What are your ideas in terms of WA being a real competitive leader in the world and ensuring that we can compete at that global level against other parts of Australia and Asia and the world indeed?
Still with me?
Yeah.
When you guys don't worry, I have lots of questions. All right. As I said, we've got comparative advantages. We've got to build on those. If you're looking at remote operations, for example, where we are right now, there's a remote operations centre literally 50 metres away, which is the equivalent of NASA's Houston Mission Control. All right, then we've got half a dozen of these in WA. So we're world leaders in remote operations. We do automation, AI, and robotics and all that sort of stuff incredibly well. But that's been driven out of industry, taking the front foot and doing those things. So we have an incredibly sophisticated resource sector, but we don't tell the story about the really sophisticated, smart stuff that's associated with making that a successful resource sector. We can build around that capability that we've created in WA. And so, if we go, a kilometre up the road past Karakumba, past King Park, we've got Down Under Geo Solutions with their massive supercomputer called Bruce. Why wouldn't you call your supercomputer Bruce? Just down the road a couple of k's that way, we've got another high performance computing centre in Pawsey. Fantastic assets. What we probably don't have enough of is people in the whole data science area. I think we've been slow adopters, to be perfectly honest, and a little bit asleep at the wheel. I think we're catching up. Well, in my view, this is an opportunity to play leapfrog, to say, you know what, we've got a bunch of really good things. How can we jump around other people and not necessarily just be followers? So, this to me is a seminal moment where we need to grasp the opportunities and take off.
Thank you, Professor Clinken.
Just call me Peter.
Peter. Okay, Rachel. The WADSI 2020 report recognised skills shortages in data science. What is the role of the universities in addressing this shortage, and what steps can industry take?
Okay, well, actually, Peter set that up really nicely. We didn't arrange this, but people, of course. So the obvious one that a university is responsible for is training specialist data scientists. But I want to, assuming you'll recognise that, I want to bring two slightly less obvious ones. One of them is training the people who aren't data scientists but need data literacy, and that was something that the WADSI report picked up. So there are going to be thousands of people, graduates who are not data science graduates, but who need to learn to know to have the literacy to use this. So that's something we are looking at through a number of mechanisms. How do we spread that knowledge? I think the other non-obvious way that universities are contributing to this, or particularly I'm in my own department, is that university is not just for students, undergraduate students. So through our research projects, for example, so a project with an industry partner who wants to explore, maybe what could data science be? How do we do this leapfrogging? How do we pick up what we might be able to do with data science? So we've got a lot of projects of that sort, from speaking earlier to somebody about smart buildings and new technologies and robotics and so many areas. And so I think that's another way that we can leapfrog by working universities, which is what the universities are founded for, working together with industry to address some of those problems.
And in terms of data science leadership, what are some of the issues that we should be focusing on there? Can you also talk to us a little bit about the issues around ethics with artificial AI?
Oh, so the answer, critical, trustworthy science. So data science, the old adage that statistics are nice, but data science has such a potential to be possibly not used properly, or to be taking decisions away from people. And so I think we need to start thinking, or we need to be thinking deeply about how do we use the results. If we're using data science to inform, science-informed policy, let's make sure it really is deep science. Let's make sure we're teaching the people that are going to be going out to do this about ethics. So our own the AI program that I developed at UWA actually has an ethics minor. They do right through to formal ethics with philosophers, and I think that's just so important for the people that are going to be building. So if we want to get to a compassionate society by, now, but any time, that's got to be built into it too. So we stop this tech, non-tech divide and realise that the decisions we're making and the way we're using this technology is affecting everybody, and we need to do that in a trustworthy way. That's the big one. There's lots, but I won't.
Thank you, Rachel. So Anne, can you please talk us through what PAWSI does and some of the really exciting projects you've been working on? Just for the audience, there's probably a few people here who don't know what PAWSI does.
Yeah, thank you. So PAWSI is one of Australia's two Tier 1 supercomputing centres, and we provide supercomputing, cloud computing, data storage, visualization services, and the expertise to work nationally on high-impact science and research projects. It's free to Australian researchers and scientists. I think that's a huge bonus, but we're funded by the federal government, the WA government, the 4 public universities here, and we're an unincorporated joint venture with CSIRO. So we do big science, we do big research. Just looking forward, I think another springboarding off of Peter's conversation, there's the SKA, right? So if we're looking down the road, right, we've got the SKA, the Square Kilometre Array project, and PAWSI is working with radio astronomers on 2 precursor projects for that, the MWA, the Murchison Wide Field Array, as well as ASCAP, the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder project. And I think what's interesting there is, this is, I don't know the word for it. It's not big data, right? It's massive data. It's data on steroids. I don't know how you call it that, but it's just enormous amounts of data coming in, and it has to be processed, right? So it needs a supercomputing power. It needs data power, data storage, and we need the skills. We need to push technology to be able to do this. We need to be able to push people with the skills and extend and really challenge ourselves. I think WA, as well as the world in this project, as the SKA will be one of the world's largest public science data projects. So it's really exciting that right up the road we've got 131,000 antenna, right, poised to go. So working on getting people built up with the right skills is critical to that. To work toward that, PASI has had a $70 million refresh. Leading that is our friendly supercomputer called Cetonics, named after our friendly little marsupial here in WA. It will have 50 petaflops of power, supercomputing power, which is a lot of supercomputing power. If you think about it very simplistically, that's like 150,000 laptops working in parallel to solve problems and crunch through problems and algorithms, simulations, models. I always have a hard time getting my head around that number. And so I think about it, okay, 1 petaflop in 1 second, right? So if you were to do simple calculations, 1 plus 1, 2 plus 2, whatever, think about doing that for 1 second. How many can you do in a second? Maybe 2, 4, if you're really half. Well, a 1 petaflop supercomputer, in 1 second, it can do in parallel what it would take you to do in about 32 million years sequentially. So that's a lot of power. Cetonics, our little pocket computer, will be 50 petaflops. So that's the kind of size we're talking, and that's the kind of opportunities we're creating here in WA, along with how do we work through pipelines that have such massive amounts of data coming through. I guess my idea, if I were the data gods up for a day, I would, in the education sector, be normalizing data. I would take it out of STEM. I would normalize it across all subjects. We should be using data and talking about data in everything. And if we get that from primary all the way through secondary into tertiary, by the time SKA and 2040 and 50 and beyond comes, we have a very savvy community here, competitive globally. So that would be my 2 cents.
Melanie, so I'd like to ask you about the demand for data science, how this has changed in WA over the last few years.
Yep.
And the other part of that question is, what do you see that works? You're involved in a lot of data science projects. Mm-hmm. What works, but what are the things to avoid? If I want my project to fail, what are the things I must do?
All right, so I'm actually going to answer the second part of that first because I want to make a comment based on what Anne said about the SKA.
Okay.
So I worked on the SKA for 20 years and I led the science analysis pipeline for that project, which is how you take the data and turn it into products that astronomers can use. And the biggest challenge with that is not the technology, it's people. And people are always the problem. So in the case of the SKA, with no disrespect to my radio astronomy colleagues globally, radio astronomers have a fixed view of how they should process their data, which has been developed in their early careers based on the technology and architectures of compute that they had then. They have not translated that into the architectures of supercomputers that we have now. So there's a real limitation there in thought processes that can only be overcome by working together. So radio astronomers need to work with HPC experts to be able to realise this goal that they have of processing these many, many petabytes of data that we're going to get per second from the SKA. And the same issue translates into data science more generally. So when people come in to see the Goethe Institute for Computation to talk about a possible project, they often come in saying, we've got this amazing data set, we want you to do machine learning. It's not a data set that's capable of doing machine learning. It'll be patchy, it'll be not properly annotated, potentially not essentially dense enough in some dimension. And so when people come in with fixed ideas and aren't willing to listen, that's a barrier, so that's a mistake. Collecting your data before speaking to data scientists, also a mistake. So people can invest an enormous amount of time and energy collecting data which they think is going to be useful, and then they come and see some data scientists and they go, no, that's no good. So I think getting in at the ground level and having conversations with data science and data analytics teams beforehand on how to collect the data, what you're going to need to be able to use it, are the ways to get to success rather than have things go horribly wrong. Always people problems is I think the biggest barrier, and communication. And I think coming back to the point about data literacy, I think having data literate teams who can then have those conversations with data scientists. So then back to the first part of your question, Alex, how have I seen it change in WA in the last few years? So data science is an emerging field, and the Australian Jobs Guide 2021 lists it for the first time as an emerging field. So that's a recognition that enough people are putting down on their tax forms or census information that they work in data science. But as Peter said, it's still a bit slow compared to the rest of the world. So there's been an enormous uptake in the need for data science across all sectors here in WA. We're probably a bit behind the rest of the world, but that curve of uptake is increasing dramatically. So we're seeing data science everywhere, I think, and there's huge opportunities going forward.
Excellent, thank you very much. How are we doing for time, Ivana? Yep. Okay, so I'd like to open up to the audience if they've got questions for our panellists. Please feel free.
Thanks, Peter. Prashant Singh from Melrose. As we know that every device is generating data, and every government department or any agency or any public sector information is all made up of data. Now, public policy is a very interesting field. How we can use data science and insights to pinpoint all our public policies and especially get some insight in terms of not a post-mortem, but also preventative areas of where we can actually invest money, which will be more bang for the buck. And also challenges around sharing data among agencies. There's a lot of archive legislation that doesn't allow to share data. So because we have all these processing powers and the storages, how we can get sure that the data set we need is there, is available, and underlying pinning legislation or anything and stopping it, we can get rid of that, because that's quite required. Thank you.
I'll take that one. That's a great question, because data underpins everything, absolutely everything, right? And it's how you use it to the best benefit for society. I mean, things can go wrong with cyber security risks, etc., right? But how you can use it for good and not evil, that's the real question. So, sorry, I'm glad you laughed. It's a dad joke, sorry. I chaired 6 years ago a review of data leakage in state governments, and I was appalled. Right? I put out a report which had a number of recommendations. They still have not been enacted. I've just come from the launch of Science on the Swan by Carolyn was a minute ago, and fortunately the minister got up and said, we're now going to start implementing some of those recommendations that were put forward 6 years ago. But crying out loud, now, seriously guys, how slow do you need to be? It's just bleeding obvious that this is critical. How do you make an informed decision if you're not looking at the data, analysing it appropriately, and using it to your benefit? Otherwise it's just, oh yeah, I think I'll have a crack at that, right? And that has been the modus operandi for far too long. We now have the capability to make these decisions in an informed way, if we were to get our act together. So, this long rant, right? My apologies, but having said that, there is now privacy and data sharing legislation that is going through government. So privacy is really, really important, because we need to make sure that everything's done ethically, appropriately, and the community comes along and feels that they are safe. right? They don't want to suddenly go, holy cow, I didn't want anyone knowing about that stuff that I was doing, blah, blah, blah. Right, number one. Number two, I know there are some people from government agencies here. I know JETSI's here. Any other agencies here? Come on, own up, I'll track you down. Okay, some agencies that are not in this room, okay, have got a habit of saying that data is mine. No, that's BS. Sorry. Right? That is not true. That data belongs to the community. Right? If you're holding data, you're holding it for someone. And in this case, if you're an agency, you're holding it for the community. You have an obligation, in my view, to share it so it's used in the best interest of our community. And I don't accept that it is your data that you will wrap your arms around and prevent from being used to the best possible advantage. So if I'm passionate about this, you might have picked it up. That this is something that is so important to the future of our state. If we want to get to that 2040 point that I was talking about, well, this is one of the key underpinnings, that we collect data, we share it, we analyse it, and we make informed decisions based on all of that. So there's a guy at the back there, Chris Gentle, who's trying to stay incognito, but I'm going to bust him because what he's been able to demonstrate through WOMSI and WOBSI is bringing together different agencies, bringing data from a whole lot of different sources, bringing it together and using it in an informed way. Right? This is the model that we need to be using much more broadly. We've got some great pilots that are enabling us to do this. Let's use it broadly so we then become really, really efficient at doing those things that you talked about. Here ends my sermon for today.
To Melanie, she said that things could horribly go wrong. Please explain a little further
You want to know how things go
everybody.
horribly wrong? Well, usually people lose a lot of money. So the way any project can go wrong is if the scope creeps, if it goes out of budget. So I'm not necessarily talking about life-threatening situations here. Although if you were doing bushfire modelling, right? So you've got taking satellite data from the Earth and you're doing bushfire modelling and you're projecting where bushfires are going, and you've made a mistake in a project like that, or it's slow or whatever, you do have the potential to have destruction of property and things like that happen if that goes wrong. So that's a kind of projecting to truly catastrophic issues of getting things wrong. I think the biggest thing that can go wrong with data science is AI for driving cars, to be honest. So if you get your AI wrong on your Tesla, how do you make those ethical decisions? If two Tesla cars are going to crash together, how do you decide which one swerves, which one goes? That's a really
Responsible?
Yeah, who's responsible? Yeah, the insurance company's going to love that. So there are real-world serious consequences for data science projects. And so things can go wrong and do go wrong, and so they go wrong on a small scale, but those can escalate to something which is actually very serious. So that was essentially what I was alluding to.
Thank you for your nice speeches. I'm a student at UWA, I'm a professor, and I was wondering, you were talking about smart buildings. A new area of IoT and blockchains are converting in 20 years, but now they're emerging more. Even data science was used back like 600 years ago by Khwarazmi, Ibn Sina, all of them. So I was wondering, are you planning to do any data science stuff in blockchains and smart cities, not smart buildings, and use of computer vision in that stuff so you can control the smart cities by satellite? So I actually have a project at computer vision, but we're using satellite to pick cars and stuff out of the frames. So it was the first question. The second one is accessing to the data set is too hard now. So if a person wants to do a research, there's no way to do it without a lot of money or having a contact in some of the agencies. So how do you plan to make it easier? Or are you gonna make it easier, or just we have to be real good data scientists to get access to those data sets? Thank you.
I'll talk about access to data sets. So through ASDAF, we're using satellite data to enable SMEs and researchers to do a bunch of different projects. All of the data that we're currently using is open access data. So there are plenty of projects you can do for free with free data. I just want to sort of make that clear to start with. But your point about space-based data requiring money to get access to is well taken. That is indeed the case. So at the moment, I think the way that that gets worked on is you come up with a commercially viable reason to get access to those data and you convince someone to pay for them. So Google does that, for example. If you're asking whether or not the state is going to invest in giving open access to data, then I'm going to chuck that back to Peter.
I think that I was going to say something similar. It's, we're moving to a new economy, a new way of the world working. Data is actually one of the resources in that economy, and it's not a matter that we'll have this open utopia. That just means the state's paying for it all, which means that we're paying for it all through our taxes. So there will be some free data, and there will be some reasons for sharing it, but I think it will become a commodity, and there will be good reasons for it not necessarily all being open, and we have to think about what that economy might look like. And the other thing is there are still dangers to using data inappropriately or inappropriately prepared data. So I've just been doing smart city. I wanted to say something about smart cities because that's my area, and that's I've just been doing a project on wastewater treatment. What was I going to say about it? And the picture. So this is a new area to them. It's an example of the sort of project I was talking about, where a company has come and said, we think this AI stuff and data stuff might be useful. Can we work together? So we work very carefully through what you can do, but also what you can't do. And I show them this Rumpelstiltskin slide, and I say it's not, it's exactly yours. Bring me all this. We've got this big pile of data. I'm sure you'll be able to do something good with it. No, you have to think through that. We have to work together about how that's used. So I think, and as this community, maybe we can value that too. So look, good, high quality data is expensive to produce, is valuable, and is part of a new way of thinking about the world. And that's, I think we can contribute to that rather than saying, why can't we have more free stuff? Because actually, we don't want to get in another Google situation. If it's free, you're the product, and that's not it's not ethical.
I think the other thing that I'd like to raise, which people don't talk about very often, is collecting data you don't need.
Yes.
So, storage, compute storage, is also a commodity, and it also costs money. People don't seem to realise this. So there's a lot of data which is collected, which no one actually wants to analyse, and it is taking up storage and costing a lot of money. And so that's another thing that needs to be factored into thinking when you're designing data collection pipelines.
This is more a policy question, I suppose. I'm not a data scientist, I'm a humble chartered accountant, but I was brought up in the culture of you believe in God, everyone else doing data. And just to put a framework to this question, I have a daughter who just arrived from Singapore after being there for 15 years, and that pretty much directs to Anne and Leslie Peter. And I have got two granddaughters, 4 and 6, so I have vested interest in this. So they are saying within 2 weeks of going to school, this is boring. So I asked my daughter, hey, what has gone wrong? Then my daughter said, to me, nothing has happened for 15 years in WA. The question is, we are already falling behind instance. So we may have an elite group of people at the very top who understand data science. But the question is how to get it to the population. Because if we don't do that, as a mass, just believing the mass, we will not progress in a competitive world. Thank you.
Oh. You want to start, Melanie?
Sure. So we have it's new, but since October we have a Learn at Posi site, and we're creating data sets. The students are creating them. So it's bottom up. It's coming and it's about the student. And so this particular one is about sleep. What student doesn't like to sleep? What student wouldn't like to talk about sleep and talk about it a lot? And so these are secondary students. But the point is that we're getting data sets out there, and I like the fact that we're making them free. So the assumption from young on is that there's going to be data out there that they can collect, that they can access, that they should query. They shouldn't just because they see a number think, oh, that's true, it's accurate. They need to be savvy, yes, they need to be savvy questioning citizens of our city and of our state and of our world. And that is, they're not studying data science per se, they're doing projects that happen to have data associated with them, and we're learning all about the things that they need to do, data hygiene, outliers, all of the things that they need to be doing with the data, without just saying, like, this is a STEM subject, and then kids are going to turn off, or some of those students are going to turn off, some are going to be excited. But you just do something that's interesting with the students and generate that from young on and continue it. I think the primary schools here are doing a better job than the secondaries from when we see work experience kids come in. Then it relies on the passion of the teacher. Their teacher happens to be interested in quantum. And so you talk to them about quantum and their eyes light up. They get it. It somehow resonates with them, but they're not being taught that in the schools. So to help put that into the curricula and give opportunities and data sets and conversations where those students can be involved and then carry it on through, so that in 2040 we're not having these same conversations about how are we going to fix this. We should be doing it all the way up.
Yeah, so just to build on that, I think there's a responsibility on everyone to understand how society is changing, and we are becoming a data-rich, data-driven society. And so it's important to speak to parents and teachers and students about the opportunities in data science and how the world is changing and how you can use data, as Anne says, in any field, and you will need to. So I'm going to give two shout-outs. One is the Department of Education. So I just came back from Geraldton last night, where I was talking to students and teachers and parents about data science and careers in data science in the future in WA, and that's to help with the exposure. And the other shout out I want to give is to Alex and his team, because they're running the Data Science for Business conference here in WA in June, and there's a stream for high school students to come in and learn about data science and what it is and what it looks like to be a data scientist. And I think those sort of things are what we need as a grassroots movement, and then to help the government, push that through to actual curriculum development.
Can I take up on that? I think you've raised a really fundamental question, because I think there are pockets of where the education sector grasped it. I don't think it's widespread enough. I think we have a curriculum that is essentially 150 years old, or a model of teaching that is 150 years old. We need to get into at least the 20th century before we can get to the 21st century. Right? I'm actually not joking. If you're looking at physics, for example, we teach inordinate amounts of Newtonian physics. Right? We're only just starting to get into Einsteinian physics, which is 100 years old, for crying out loud. Right? So we are very slow to get that big bureaucratic machinery to turn around. We have to do it, and we've got to do it quickly. The other real worry for me is the digital divide. It is real. You can go by postcode as to how successful kids are going to be in these areas, and that is unacceptable in my view. We cannot have a society that says we've got haves, the wealthy western suburbs that are just fine, no problems there, but then you've got suburbs elsewhere that are not experiencing getting the skills that are necessary. So we have a responsibility, and I think it is a moral responsibility to make sure that we provide the environment for our kids, grandkids, and so on. And so every one of us in this room has to take on board this responsibility that says we want our kids to get the best opportunities for the future, and you need to press the government and the department to do that. Otherwise, it is a very, very, very slow process.
Thank you so much. I don't think we've got time for any more questions just at the moment, but can I get everyone please to thank our panellists? What a great discussion. Welcome back. I'd now like to welcome the Honourable Stephen Dawson, Minister for Innovation and ICT, to officially launch a Data Science Week and provide an update on data science in Western Australia. Thank you, Minister.
Thanks, Alex, and good afternoon, everybody. Can I begin by saying Nala Kadich, Wajok Noongar Moort, Kayan Kadak Nijibuja. Can I acknowledge that we're on the land of the Wajok people of the Noongar Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I also acknowledge Professor Peter Clinken, who I think has been here earlier in the day, Mr Mark Stickels, Executive Director, Pawsey Supercomputing Centre, Mr Alex Jenkins, Director, WA Data Science Innovation Hub, and Gary Allenson, the Curtin University Associate Deputy Vice-Chancellor for Research. Great to be here, and great to be here for the launch of Data Science Week 2022. Congratulations to the Pawsey and the Data Science Hub for hosting this important and what is now nationally recognised event. The WA Data Science Innovation Hub is a McGowan government initiative ensuring the state remains at the forefront of the digital revolution by increasing the uptake, education, training and awareness of data science in WA. And together every year, the Pawsey Supercomputing Research Centre and WA Data Science Innovation Hub bring the nation Data Science Week. The week is a celebration of data science and the fostering of collaboration, innovation, expertise and networking throughout the scientific domains. Western Australia continues to build a competitive advantage in data science and analytics. Data science skills are already providing tremendous benefit to Western Australia. As Minister for Innovation and ICT, I have the privilege of seeing firsthand how critical science, technology, engineering and mathematics are for bettering all of our lives. Most of the fastest growing occupations require STEM knowledge and skills. In all fields, we need people with digital and enterprise skills who can think critically and take an innovative approach to addressing challenges. The state government acknowledges that in order to grow our digital presence in the global economy, we need to prepare Western Australians with the right digital literacy skills, and so identified early on that data science is extremely important to our economic development and jobs growth in the state. It underpins most sectors in WA, including mining and energy, cybersecurity, health and medical life sciences, agri-tech, defence, space and new technology businesses. Data science is a growth industry which can make and save money, better target investment and improve data sharing across organisations. Now, I have heard it said that data is the new gold and that digital innovation is the key to the future of work. And that's precisely why the McGowan government has invested in both the Pawsey Centre and the Data Science Hub. Pawsey is a key asset to Western Australia, as people in this room would know. It helps attract talent and investment into our great state, helps build our reputation as a leader in world-class research, and enables critical research for industry impact and public good. And since 2016, the state government has invested about $26 million in Pawsey. And I'm pleased to say that following an evaluation of that investment, the Honourable Roger Cook, Minister for Science, has approved its funding for a further 5 years, which is fantastic. Pawsey is currently implementing a $70 million federally funded upgrade, and I'm sorry if you've heard some of this stuff earlier on today, but it's quite exciting. So a $70 million federally funded upgrade to its supercomputing infrastructure, and the second and final stage will be completed by mid-2022 via the delivery of a new supercomputer known as Cetonex. As it is equivalent to about 3 times the combined power of Australia's current Tier 1 public research supercomputing, this will significantly increase Pawsey supercomputing capabilities. And whether it's predicting the spread of diseases or distilling insights from the enormous qualities of data coming from radio astronomy projects in the Midwest, or the ongoing technological advancements in our thriving mining industry, it will continue to make a massive difference to the state. The state government supports the expertise at Pawsey who manage critical infrastructure such as the new supercomputer, and that will deliver one of the largest data storage systems in the world. Now, the state's Data Science Hub, a collaboration with Curtin University, receives funding through the New Industries Fund and will receive additional funding of $1.2 million over 4 years through the second round of that fund. The ongoing support from both the state government and Curtin enables the Data Science Hub to ensure that the state remains at the forefront of the digital revolution. And the hub focuses on increasing the statewide uptake, as I said, education, training and awareness of data science, and builds a data-driven ecosystem and culture. It also fosters collaboration, promotes expertise and does a great deal more. And the potential in this area is extensive. There's a lot more we can be doing, and certainly I'm very pleased as Minister for Fire and Emergency Services that there's some opportunities to do work in relation to disaster relief and also transforming post-disaster damage assessments using drones, all the way to using AI to predict when natural disasters will hit and how destructive they will be. Now, we know open data in government benefits economies, and much of the published research around the advancement of machine learning in the emergency services sector has relied on the availability of open source data to train many of the AI algorithms. Open data can drive improvements to citizen experience, innovate public procurement, predict emerging governmental and societal needs, promote collaboration in service delivery and policy making, and encourage changes in organisational structures. Data collected by governments and business can deliver competitive advantages to those Western Australians who are able to utilise data-driven insights to develop innovative solutions. Data science is used by business and industry to facilitate innovative projects to achieve goals that only years ago would have seemed unimaginable. We have world-leading resource companies using data science to run autonomous mines and oil and gas assets. We have incredible radio astronomy experts leading the way in space exploration through the Murchison Wide Field Array and Square Kilometre Array Telescope. And together, the PAWSI and the Data Science Hub attracted $1.5 million in funding from the Australian Space Agency to establish the Australian Space Data Analysis Facility in Western Australia. But growth can also be impeded by limited access to infrastructure, important data not being released, limited access to data linkages, and the demand for consistent supply of graduates not being met. Innovation in data science has only been made possible by providing greater support to our data science experts, academics and businesses. This is an area that we must continually focus on and remain competitive in. Digital innovation is the key to the jobs of the future and to the future of work, which is precisely why the McGowan government supports PAWSI and the Data Science Hub. So I encourage you all to take advantage of the opportunities that are on offer through Data Science Week, because by showcasing the amazing work happening in this sector, we help support our thriving data science ecosystem. Thanks for having me today and have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. So I'd now like to announce that Data Science Week is officially open. Just go wild with data science. It's a real week of fun. So thank you very much for attending, everyone.